Hello guys, Nigel with you, Nigel's Modelling Bench. Welcome back to the channel. Today is Friday the 4th of October 2024 and I have just finished making the first video of this beauty. This is the Pocher Porsche 917K and it's a brand new kit, only available in the UK from last Monday, and yeah, it surely is a really lovely kit by the look of it. Wasn't going to do this intro, but at the end of the video I thought would be a good idea to tell you what's going on. So my plan is with this, it's if you haven't seen the review already, go and take a look. It is a lot nicer than the Lamborghini in my opinion. It's half the part count, which isn't so great because I like big part counts, but it doesn't really matter. The beauty of this kit, they have taken a lot of parts off the sprues for you, they've cleaned them up and they've painted them. So for example, where you've got coils or bits and pieces, instead of just being a lump of black plastic, they've taken it off. They've painted them the blue colour. They've done the silver band around it. They've done it really, really nice. So if you're not a scale modeler, if you just want to build yourself a model of this absolutely gorgeous, iconic sports car or race car, then you don't really need all the modelling skills to put it together. It will just go together for you. Bearing that in mind, I'm going to do kind of almost two builds of this. The plan is, where the kit will allow, what I'm going to do is do an out-of-the-box build and build it as they show you in the instructions. So not glue anything together, not repaint anything, not clean up any seams, not do anything, just put it together where I can and just show you how it's going to look, how it's going to come together. And then perhaps after each video, or maybe combine a couple of videos, do an A version. So maybe do, you know, video 12, video 13, and then have a video 12/13A where I go in and actually do some modifications to the parts, remove seams. I mean, removing seams I think should be done anyway, which I show you in this video in detail. And I say countless times, you don't have to do it. You can just do it if you want to. It doesn't have to be done. I just think the model will look a lot nicer if it is done. Now, obviously, there's people that are going to go a lot further than me. They're going to add wiring. They're going to add missing parts. They're going to add hoses, cabling, cable ties, all that sort of stuff. They're going to do all of that. I'm not going too far with it because, as some of you will know, Pocher have actually given me this to build on my channel. So I don't think it would be fair to spend a year taking this model and adding lots and lots of extra detail and everything. I think really what would be best to do is show you what's available out of the box, but with a bit of paint added and stuff. So you'll see it come together bit by bit out of the box, and then you'll see a sort of revisited video, much like I've done with the Hatchet Lancaster. So in part one, we're working on basically step one in the instructions, which is the transmission and the cooling and everything. I found a small issue with a screw that's too short, but I'll cover that and show you how to get around it. That's what I do. Whenever I find an issue, I will tell you about it and I will tell you how to get around it. Just because Pocher have given me this, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is just the best thing since sliced bread and it's absolutely wonderful and it's gorgeous and it's, you know, it's something you should buy. I will show you the nitty gritty, the brilliant stuff and the bad stuff as well. And at the moment, the bad stuff has been one screw, so it's not really an issue. Then what I'll do is I'll go and revisit and show you how I want to build it with changing their build sequence and everything. If there's any things like part numbers missing or errors in the instruction where they're showing it going upside down or something, I will also point that out to you, and I will point it out to Pocher, which is something I mentioned in the video. I think having the instructions available online is a fantastic idea. If it was only me on this planet building this model, if no one else on the planet had this model yet and they said to me, can you build this for us, Nigel, and go through it and proofread the instructions sort of thing, I could start building this now, tell them that screw number's wrong, that part number's wrong, you're showing that upside down, you need more detail here. They can go and update the instructions like that. And then you will download the instructions and you will get the latest version of them. If they printed them and put them in the box and this was sat on the shelf for 2 years, you go to the model shop and buy it, you've got instructions that are 2 years out of date. Yeah, sure, they're going to be fine, you're going to get on with it, but the less experienced modeler may need that extra guidance to get them, you know, just over the line. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea. And what I will be doing, if you're watching this, Marcus, I will be emailing you every time I find an issue, and you can add the issue to your list. If anybody else out there finds an issue in the instructions, if you want to let me know, by all means do. But if I haven't reached that stage yet, I'm not going to be telling Marcus, because I want to be able to back it up and make sure what I'm telling him is fact. And also, as I say, I don't just want to say, this is rubbish, it doesn't fit. I want to say, this is rubbish, it doesn't fit. But if we add this and this and cut here and do this, then it does fit. That's what I want to do. Okay. So basically, yeah, I wasn't going to do this, as I say, before I made this video, I wasn't going to do this intro, but I've decided that I would, just to let you know that I'm going to try, as far as the kit allows, build it out of the box and then take it apart again, make an A version, revisited, and do it again. All right. So hope you enjoy it. It is lovely. It's going together very nicely, and I will see you next week. So grab yourself a beer, coffee, tea, wine, whatever, and sit back and enjoy, and hope you like it. And if you like this, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe. It's down there, isn't it? Please hit that subscribe and notifications bell, and you'll hear about when I'm putting this out. I'll also put a playlist together, so you'll be able to just bang this out. If you want to wait for it all to be finished, you can sit and watch them all. Bye for now. Hello, welcome along. Nigel here with you, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and this today is part 1 of the actual build of this beautiful Pocher 1/8 Porsche 917K. Now, if you've already seen them, you've already seen them. If you haven't, please go take a look. Have a look at my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe down there. And if you like what you're seeing, give us a thumbs up. And if you don't like it, give us a thumbs down. But basically, if you haven't already seen it, I've done a complete unboxing of this model. And then I've done like a preparation video where I talk about tapping threads and what tools you should have and this, that and the other. And also about, you know, organisation for your screws and everything, rather than having to get bags out every 2 minutes. You've got a box here with labelled up screws, which makes life a lot easier. And then all your other smaller metal parts, your pins and springs and whatever, are all there in the box, ready for you to get out. So, moving forward, here we have the instructions. Now, today is, I've left this last minute, this is Friday, the 4th of October 2023. So this video is going out for you tomorrow evening at 8 PM, Saturday the 5th. And basically, what we're going to be doing, we'll do a video every Saturday, and we will do this piece by piece. And what I will probably do is work through the instructions step by step. Okay, now here I've got my printed out instructions. I'm led to believe by those that have bought this, because it was released on Monday, I'm led to believe that what you've got is basically a kit, and in there is a link to go to the Pocher website and download your own instructions. I think that's a very good idea indeed, because, for example, let's just say, for example, I turn over this page and I ring them up and I say, I think you've made a mistake. Screw F is not a 2.3 thread, it's a 2.6. They can go on the computer, bang, and everybody that downloads their instructions from that day forward has got the updated version. Whereas the other option is to phone the printers and say, can you please update this instruction? Oh yeah, but we've already printed 3,000 print copies. Okay, so with 3,000 first on. Yeah, so that is the beauty of doing this. Likewise, you know, if I say, oh, this part number here is not DCA 14, it's 16, and you have to do this first, not that. You know, they can just update it, press of a few buttons, job done. So you're always getting the latest instructions. So it might be worth, in the early days of your build, if you're doing this, if you're picking it up sort of once every couple of weeks or something, it might be worth, you know, when you get to step 4, just go and have a look at the instructions online, see if they match what you've got, see if there's been any added notes. I think what you'd expect to see, sometimes you may see something like, you know, like where this starter motor fits on the side of the transmission, there may be a little diagram here showing you that it has to go on a sort of 30-degree angle or something like that. So, you know, that sort of stuff is always really handy to have. So that's a beauty, that's a big thumbs up for Pocher there, well done. The only downside to it, of course, is you have to print your own instructions, and if you don't have a printer, then you could always have it on your computer, I suppose. If you don't have a computer, then you best go and see a friend. Anyway, So I'm just going to briefly, quickly, through this first video, I'm going to take you through the way I plan to do things, and then I won't mention it again, I promise. So we've got our instructions here. We've got all our notes and bits and pieces. We've got all our screws and everything all laid out in the box, as I said. So I've got here, this is step one. And step one is basically assembling the transmission. So what I've done, I've gone through all the parts here. So you can see here we've got DCA 3, DCA 14, DCA 13, DCA 21. This is the tray. I think that means die-cast tray A. And that is basically the tray with all your bodywork in. So you've got your pretty Golf orange and blue parts. Basically those parts there, so these here, so the main transmission casings, the top and the back end, yeah, they're all in that tray with your body parts. So I've got all those out ready to go. So they're here. Here we have sprues. So we have sprue F, sprue H, got another H there, we've got L and we've got G. So basically I've got the bags out to show you what's what and what's going with what. One of the first things I did, if you remember when I did my review, as I opened the bags, I labelled them with a letter so I can go straight in the box, tumble through all the sprues and find it. And within here you can see, just show you the way Pocher have done this. So rather than just have a sprue of parts like this, what they've done, you can see they've removed some parts from the sprue. Okay, so you've got your sprue G there with your parts. Okay, and then here you've got G1, which was probably in there, or in there perhaps. You've got G2, oh sorry, G3, which was probably in there. We've got this part here, which is G2, that was probably in there. And then we've got G7, which I'm guessing was perhaps up there or something. We've got another part here, G5, and then we've got another part here, G6. Lord only knows where that would have been, but it would have been on there somewhere. So basically what they've done is they've taken the parts off the sprue and painted them, which is great if you just want to screw this together and end up with a pretty looking model. It's absolutely great. For someone like me who likes to paint and get rid of seams and everything, it's not fantastic, but in a lot of examples I won't be bothering. I won't remove their paint, I won't paint over, I won't do anything. But for example with this piece here, that's part of this intake ducting for the transmission cooling. I'm going to actually sand and fill those seams rather than have a seam on there. But for parts like this, I'm not sure where they're going to go, but they may well be just best left alone. Certainly this part here, the exhaust hanger bracket, other than sprue gates and stuff, I don't think there's any real reason to spray anything. The only time I will do that is if, for example, can we see anything on here? I certainly can't see anything on there at the moment, looking through the bag. But I did notice on that little bracket, we can actually get this out. Something I may well be doing, because as you can see here, there's a sprue gate and it hasn't been very nicely done. So I will probably sand that down and then repaint the whole thing. There's probably a sprue, yeah, there's a sprue gate there and a sprue gate there. Look, there's also a mould seam line all the way around. So, you know, I'll probably deal with that and paint it again. But, you know, stuff like those blue parts we just saw, I'll probably just leave as they are. So that's our bag for G. So that's that one taken care of. And then we've got a part that we need, which is G6. We've got that one there. So that's that. I'm just going to see who that is. Keep trying to text me a minute. Hang on. So we've got those parts there. So we've got our other sprues here. So we've got sprue. In here we've got sprue H and L. There we go. So we've got L on there. Sorry, it's not H. Well, I've got H09 in there. That should be in there. I've got L here. H09 should be in the H bag, not in the L bag. So we've got H over there as well. That's my mistake, packaging it back up wrong. That's a H as well, I'm guessing. So I've split those up, but that's why I put them in the wrong bag. So yeah, here we have L10. So there's L10, and there's L6 there. So we've got these separate bags. Sorry guys, another text message. Right, so those two there can go back in the H. So we've got the L, that's dealt with, so that can go down there. And then here we've got the F sprue. So we've got F parts here, and there again we've got all painted parts and everything in there. But here we've just got the F sprue, and we want part F2. So part F2 is there. This is part of the gear change mechanism. It's got part F2 there, and that's the only part we need off that, so that can go back in its bag. Really important, guys, keep these screws in their bags, otherwise you're going to be struggling around trying to identify them. The other thing you can do is a lot of people put masking tape on there with a letter. You may as well just keep them in the bags with the letter on the bag, because if you start chucking these in the box with all the separate bits and pieces, I mean, you can imagine here that we've got H, we've got the sprue, we've got a multitude of parts. You're going to put that over there so I don't lose it. We've got a multitude of parts here. You know, they're all going to be in the bottom of the box. They're all going to be rubbing up against each other, getting scratched, getting damaged. You know, keep them in their bags with one letter on the bag. Job done. So, as I say, we've got a lot of pre-painted parts here, which is really nice for the guy who just wants to screw his model together and not have to worry about sanding and painting and doing all the scale model stuff that a lot of us love to do. I appreciate a lot of you will be building this will not be scale modelers. You will just be big Porsche fans, and we know there's lots of those in the world. Okay, so we want H8, which is the starter motor, so we're going to cut that one off there. These are just a pair of Tamiya snips. I've been through different tools and stuff. And then we want H27, which is over here. This is the actual gear change sort of rod that goes into that assembly there, DCB9. So that's that. So we've got those parts there. So we've got all the L's off, we've got the G off, we've got the H's, and we've got the F's. Okay, so this can go back in the H bag, and then all of this can get put away back in the box, because all we're doing in this video is step one. I'll see you in a second. Okay, so now that's put away. Good idea to try and keep everything tidy, especially if you've got dogs or cats roaming around, which I haven't, unfortunately. But I'm sure they'll find the bags of plastic parts on the floor will be most exciting. There's the main phone going now. I'm not going to answer that because it'll be some complete, utter AI asshole trying to sell me insulation or something. Just go away and leave me alone. I feel like getting rid of phones, everything, because I just don't get 2 minutes peace. It's ridiculous. Right. So we've got all our parts all ready to go. So as we can see, oh, we haven't got all our parts at all. Got a bag over there to put the spare parts. So here we have our screws, yeah, which I was going to talk about. Here we have 3 trays of die-cast parts. Okay, so we have DCC. You can see on here we have DCC 12. Okay, so that's tray C. And then here we've got DCD. Okay, so you've got all the DCD numbers on there. So that's tray D. And then here we have DCB. Remember, DCA was the part with all your bodywork parts, the tray with all your bodywork parts. This is DCB. So, basically, I think this lid is just going to lift off. No, it's sellotape down. So we'll find the edge of the sellotape and peel it back. Just like so. If I can leave the tape on there, it would be great, because that way I won't come to get it out one day and find that it's some... Oh, they've sellotaped it in 4 places. I'll get this open, then I'll come back. Alright, so we've got here, we have DCB8. So there's DCB8. And then here we have DCB8A. So what is the difference in these two? Okay, 8A has got a triangular flange, B has got a round flange. Okay, so that's easy for you to not get confused with. And then we have here, we have DCB89. DCB9, not DCB89, DCB9, there he is. DCB9, and he's done in flat black. Okay, so that's that. So we've got all the parts off now to do step 1. Now, I know that some of you are thinking, come on, get on with it, get on with it, get on with it. But remember, guys, there are a lot of people out there that have bought this, that have never done a Pocher kit before. They've never done anything this size before. In fact, they may have not even ever built a model before, but they want to have a go, so that's why. And the other alternative to this, the next one down in the price, is the Agora Models one, which obviously you get very, very detailed piece by piece instructions because it's like a part work. But obviously Pocher don't give you that, so that's what I'm here for. Right, so if you follow me step by step every week, you can't go wrong. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be assembling this out of the box. Where I can get away with it, I won't be using glue, because what I want to do is assemble it and show you what you're going to get if you build it straight from the box with no alterations whatsoever, and then I'm going to go back and sand, fill, spray and everything, and I'll come back and show you the end result. I'll probably show you some of the techniques going forward at the beginning, but then later on, you know, there's no point in me showing you how to correct an issue with the sprue gate. Say they've got a nasty sprue gate on here. Where are we? Have we got a nasty sprue gate on here? Nope, that's been done all well. That's been done nicely. That one's been done all nicely as well. So fair play to them. They've done a nice job of this. Yeah, very nicely done. I can't even see, looking at it quickly, I can't see where the sprue gates were. So they've done a really nice job of that. But for example here, I mean, you can see this is a sprue gate. Here, this is where it was attached to the sprue. So if I just come along with my cutters and just come along and cut it off, which is what they may well have done in the factory, they would leave that mark on there. You can just see that raised shiny bit there. Okay, now the correct way to deal with that is to come along with a sanding stick. Now this is probably a little bit too coarse to start with, and just remove that raised part of that sprue gate. And we've also got a mould seam, you can see, going all the way around on this side as well. There's a line, like a moulded on line, and that's what's known as a mould seam. And you may not worry about those, you may not worry about it at all, because it's the engine, it's going to be buried deep down. But I like to get everything nice, and I'm going to use a wider sanding stick here. So I'm going to come down and just get rid of that mould seam on there. Alright, so this is what I'm saying. I can show you this once, maybe twice, but you don't need to keep seeing it, do you? You don't need to keep seeing it, because basically it's sanding. You know, it's the same for everything you do, unless there's a really sort of particularly tricky bit. And here I've got a soft sanding sponge, and I just use this to finish off on any round parts, and then it takes off any little flat areas that I may have made. So there we go. So that's that, and it's a very nice, very high quality plastic, because you can see where that sprue gate is. I'm just going to grab my modelling knife and remove that sprue gate from the... Got some garbage on there. Just sort of remove that sprue gate from in that little recess and in there. Yeah. But we can see that where that sprue gate was, the plastic hasn't changed. So that's really good. Normally you end up with a white line around it or something. So that's, you know, that's what I'm talking about, removing sprue gates and stuff. So anyway, I'm going to now get these parts cleaned up, because these have come off the sprue. I've cut these off, so these need to have their sprue gates removed as well. And there will be mould seams, which I want to get rid of. So there's a mould seam on there. There'll be one on there. It's actually very good. Mind you, say this is one of the first kits ever to be produced. I've had this for ages and not been able to start it, because they didn't want me to start it before it was officially released, obviously. And also, I didn't want to start it before it was officially released, because I wanted to have you guys build along with me, and I didn't want to be, you know, there's nothing more annoying than somebody telling you, oh, be careful in step 7 because part 8 is marked as part 9 or something. It's better to, I much more enjoy finding those issues myself. But I've seen it on many video builds on other people's channels. I've never had it, luckily, too much. Yeah, careful when you come to fitting those windows. They're a real swine to fit. Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. There are some really good tips out there, but sometimes it's a bit sort of, you know, obvious, shall we say. The trouble is, once you've built a model and nobody else has, it's very difficult to stop yourself doing it. And then finally we've got this part here. So we've got a great big sprue gate on there. We've got a sprue gate there. So there we are, there's that done. Just get rid of those seam lines as well. So you can see this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm showing you. And as I say, you don't have to do this, you can just screw it together. But as a minimum, I think you should do this. really. I really do, because it just looks so much better. And here you can see I'm using a knife to scrape away the seam lines rather than sand them, because on this part we've got bigger seam lines than we've got on the other two. Okay, so we just scrape away, and here I'm going to cut that sprue gate away, get rid of that, and then scrape away to get rid of the seam line. Yes, you can see I'm going near my fingers with the blade because I am very experienced doing this. I've been doing it for, what, 55 years now. So I tend not to cut myself, but if you are fairly new to the hobby, always cut away from your fingers. And if you have to get in close, you know, hold the part in a pair of tweezers or something. Hold it like that in a pair of tweezers, and then do your cutting. And then if you do slip, you're only going to scratch your tweezers, not cut yourself. Alright, and there's what we call, there's something here, you can see this circle on the surface, that circle there, that's what's called an ejection pin mark, or an ejector pin mark, and basically that is how they press the part out of the mould. Now sometimes we can get away with just sanding it. It's going to be facing backwards as well, so it's going to be quite visible, so we're going to have to get rid of that. We've also got one there which is also facing backwards, so yeah, we've got ejection pin marks to get rid of, which is great because it means I can show you guys how we deal with it. Now this round rod, remember I just went over that with a knife, and now I'm just going to go over it quickly with a sponge. There we go. And then I'm going to grab my sanding stick and just come in and lightly sand in there. And then in there as well. There we go. And then I'm just going to very lightly rub over the knife just to clean up the edges. And then with a sponge, just go in, and that'll take away any scratches or edges or burrs or whatever. And that is basically, just check the fit. That is going to go into there like that. Now it's going to have to be glued, but you can see now that I've sanded, that ejection pin mark there is quite obvious. Alright, so then this is going to go next to it like that. So you can see even with that in place, when you look down at your transmission, that ejector pin mark is going to be quite obvious. So we'll get rid of that. This is not in any way slating Hornby or Pocher or whatever. Ejector pin marks are absolutely unavoidable, and unless you've got very small sprues and very simple flat parts. For instance, if you made a sprue this big of a load of 35th scale house doors, okay, they would have the recesses in them in the panelling, but they would just fall out of the mould because there's just very, very shallow recesses. When it comes to something like this, yes, I know this is metal, but if it was plastic, you would have to have ejector pin marks in the back, just like they've got on here, to push it out of the tool. Because basically, you've got this here, when the tool opens, all of this is going to want to stick in the tool. So you have some way of holding this in the tool as the tool opens, and then to push it out, because you've got all these walls, all these surfaces here, you've got to literally push it out of the tool, and that's what they're called, ejector pin marks. They push it out. Okay, so there we go. So we're going to get rid of that ejector pin mark. So for that, I'm going to use super glue. Now my favourite, I've covered this in my tools and everything, my favourite go-to super glue is this one here. I'm going to use this new tray rather. You can see my old tray here is looking a bit, these are lids off of Pringles. So I've got my glue here. This is the VMS Flexi 5K CA Black Thin, and this is my go-to super glue for everything, okay, other than tiny parts I need to glue and go off straight away. But for all my filling and everything, this is what I use. And all I'm going to do is take a drop of this, I'm going to put a drop into that ejection pin mark, or ejector pin mark, whatever you want to call it. Alright, and I'm going to just drop that in there like that. And then in there as well. There we go. And as you can see, we've got that in there now. And you can see I've got quite a high high raised lump in there. The reason for that is it will shrink back as it dries. So I'm just going to put that there, leave that to dry. I'm not going to use accelerator. If you use accelerator, it tends to shrivel up and you get little air holes in it. So there we go. I'm just going to check on this one we don't have anything similar. Nope, this one's absolutely fine. So that one's good to go. So we'll just leave that one. We don't have any ejector pin marks on here. No, we don't. So that's all good. There's nothing else here that needs filling, I don't believe. So we're all good. These parts are beautifully finished, I must admit. Right, so we'll put that to one side. That super glue will stay usable in that tray for on a normal day, like, you know, 65, 68 degrees or whatever. That will stay normal. That will stay usable for about an hour, hour and a half. So, looking in here, now the next thing we can do is get our parts ready for putting together. So you can see we've got 2 screw Fs and 2 screw Js. So we've got 2 screw Fs, we've got 1, 2 there, holding those casings together. So I'm going to look over the page, and I can see that screw F is a 2.3. I'm going to check, because as I said earlier, there could well be a mistake. And if you tap the thread too big, then you've had it. Okay, so screw F is a 2.3 by 4. Okay, so what I'm going to do is grab my calipers, digital calipers. Some people call these vernier calipers. They're not verniers, they're digital. So that's a 2.3, so we know we're good. And the other screw we're going to use was a J, wasn't it? J is a 2mm. So here's J. Got a great big flange on here. So we're just going to check this thread. Yeah, that's a 2mm, so that's perfect. And I want to say thank you. When I did my about doing all this, I actually put some, I either put them in there or I put them in there, whatever. But thank you very much for telling me. I figured it out. I probably wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't said. This is the problem when you're making videos. You're in a room, sat on your own, talking to a camera, but at the same time talking to a few thousand people. And yeah, you tend to get a bit off track at times. So we need, I need to first of all get a screwdriver out because I haven't got myself one ready. So I'm going to get a screwdriver out. So in fact, I'll just use tweezers. So I need 2 screw Fs and 2 screw Js. So F, 1, 2, and J, 1, 2. You'll probably end up with a load of spare screws, so don't worry if you drop one. It doesn't really matter. You'll probably be okay. Perhaps try and find it later on with a magnet or something, but I know that when I finished the Lamborghini I had a handful of screws left over. So we know that F is 2.3 and we know that J is 2mm. So here I have, here we go, it's my thread cutting again. Now you have 2 options here. You can just go on and just screw these in as intended by the manufacturer, or you can cut threads. What I always say is, if I went to a shop and bought an M6 bolt and an M6 nut, I would expect the bolt to have a male M6 thread on it and the nut to have a female M6 thread in it, so I could screw them together. If you came home and the nut had no thread in it, would you just try and graunch the bolt into it? No, you wouldn't. You'd take it back, or you'd cut a thread in the nut. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm cutting a thread. So I've got a little pin vise here rather than using a tap wrench. The reason I use a pin vise is because when I reach the bottom it will stop. If it binds up it will stop. With a tap wrench, with these tiny taps, it's so easy just to snap them off. If you don't know what a tap wrench is, this is one here. And you put the tap in there, you do like that, you turn it, and before you know it, bang, you've snapped it off, because these are very brittle. They have to be because they're hard, so they're in turn they're brittle, so they snap easily. So DCB8 and DCB8A both have J screws going in them, and the J screws were, as we know, 2mm. So I've got a 2mm tap here. This is a second tap. I know that Daryl's been asking me about this. So you get a first, a second, and a bottoming, or you'll get a taper second bottoming. What it is, a bottoming tap is threaded right the way to the end and will cut. If you have a blind hole, which is a hole that doesn't go right through, so I can't see any on here. I don't have any blind holes here, unfortunately. Here you go, these are blind holes. So these are holes, but they don't go right through, so that's called a blind hole. Basically means it's blanked off on the end. So If I went in with a first tap, a taper tap, which has a really long taper on it to help you guide the tap in and keep it straight, then basically what I would end up with is thread only for about a third of that, and the rest of it would be unthreaded. So you have a second tap, which is what this is, and that kind of goes all the way to the bottom almost, and then a bottoming tap goes right to the bottom. If you're only going to buy one tap, I always recommend a second. Reason being, a taper tap would be no good for something like this where you've got a blind hole, and you'd end up with hardly any thread cut at all because you've got a taper on the front. The second tap has got a small amount of taper. I don't know if you can see that on there, but there's a small amount of shiny there. You can see where it's not ground, so it's not cutting all the way. And the other thing I always do is grind the point off the end. Go back and look at my other videos. In fact, in the setting yourself up video for the Porsche, this one, I showed you about grinding the end. So that's an M2 tap. Okay, so I know that these two pieces here, what are they? DC8AA and DC8A. DC8A, DCB8 and DCB8A. There we go, got it outlined in the end. So I'm going to cut these threads in here. So I'm going to start off, make sure it's nice and square, and just go half a turn, click back, and then one turn, back half, one turn, back half, one turn, back half. And the reason we're doing this, as I've explained so many times before, is we're breaking up the swarf. If you just keep going, I'm waiting for this tap to stop. If you just keep going, here we go, that's bottom. Do you see now what happened now? I get to the bottom, you can see I can turn that, and even though it's done up tight, the pin vise is spinning on the tap rather than the tap trying to snap off. So now I can wind that out, and if I wind this out, just want to show you something. You can see we have all these tiny little bits of metal. Let me zoom you in. You'll see all these tiny little bits of metal here. Yeah? Here. And what that is, if you can imagine, this is basically almost like you're scraping it. Imagine it's like a scriber, each thread on there. And what it's doing is it's cutting a line in the metal. So if you just kept going, you would just keep producing this long line of swarf, just like a lathe tool does on a lathe. So what you do is you come back and it breaks it off, and you end up with all these tiny little bits of swarf rather than having one long line, because one long line will wrap up in the tap and jam everything up. So look at it, nice and square, just like that, half a turn, and then go a turn, back half. Just like that. You can see the swarf coming out. There we go. And there we are, job done. So we've got our 2mm threads in there now, and as you can see, what I can do now with come along with a screw, an M2 screw, and I can literally put that in with my fingers. No graunching, no blisters, no swearing at it, nothing like that. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to grab my little T-hoo. This is a little vacuum available on Amazon, which is absolutely brilliant. So going with this and just vacuum up that swarf off the bench rather than rush it all into your carpet like I'm doing there. Okay, so that's those two, and then the next one we're going to change the tap for an M2.3. Again, this is a second tap. Again, this has the end ground flat. And what I'm going to do, here you can see the screws are going to go in there. So this side has the holes. So I'm going to take this just the same again. You don't actually need to go all the way in. But if you just keep going forward, what happens is, it didn't work. I was hoping to show you then what happens. You just keep going forward, what happens is it can bind up. But you can see there, all the metal that's coming out of there. It would appear that Pocher have made their holes slightly larger to make the screws easier to go in, because this is certainly a lot easier to tap than some of the thread cutting I did on the Lamborghini. So you may get away with just going in. If you do come back and you feel it's starting to bind, come out a couple of turns and then go back in to break that swarf up, because if you keep going, what you'll end up with is a tap jammed in the hole that you can't get out. I'm just going to change hands because my shoulder is killing me. Okay, so there we go. So there's plenty of thread in there for those little short screws. Just get all that rubbish out of there, and then you'll see that we can grab this screw, as I say, even though it's only got a tiny head on it, I am able to wind that in just like so. It would appear actually that what they've done, they've given us a very coarse screw. That thread on there appears to be coarser than the thread I've got on here. So I'm going to have to investigate this, because that appears to be almost like a very, very coarse screw. Let me have a look at these and then I'll come back. Okay, so I'm going to try and explain and show you what's going on here. It would appear that Pocher have tried to simplify the build by giving us a coarser screw. Now, I'm going to show you something here. If we look at these two screws here, M and N, this one is a 2.3 by 3 PWM and this one is a 2.3 by 5 PWM. What that means, M 2.3 thread, 3mm long, with a washer, and it's a metal screw. Okay, so 2.3 by 5mm long, and it's a washer with a metal and it's a metal screw. So if we look at these two screws, if I take out here the shorter one, this is the M and this is the N. Now hopefully you'll be able to see on here, hopefully, he says, one screw is a lot coarser than the other on the thread. You can see this one has a finer thread than this one, and I have a feeling that when they watched Moss's video, what Moss discovered was it was easier to put the coarser screws designed for plastic into the metal than the metal screws. So it looks like what they've done, they've given us a coarser thread. It's not quite as coarse. If you look here, you can see this is like a screw for going into plastic, and this is their coarser 2.3. You can see this one is a lot coarser than this one. So very, very strange. So I'm still going to cut the threads, but what I'm going to do on the next section, when we come to using one of these screws F, I'm going to try and do it without thread cutting it and see how it goes in. Now, I've already thread cut these and it's too late, but just to show you the difference, this is the 2.3 by 3 metal screw, okay, and it's got the coarse thread, and as you can see on here, I can wind this in, go about a turn and that's it, and I can't turn it anymore. My finger, that's the thread I've cut. Okay, so that's that one. Now this one here, which has got a proper M 2.3 thread on it, look at that, I can wind it all the way in by finger. Okay, so that's the beauty in thread cutting. Now it could be that Pocher have been listening to what I've been saying, they watched Moss's video and they decided, right, we're going to do something about that. So it could be they've given us coarser screws to enable it, make it easier to actually put together. Now the 2mm, they're definitely proper 2mm threads on there. But if you look in here, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see, but for example, you can see that these here, these screw Gs, they have a lovely fine thread on them compared to those screw Fs. These are quite coarse. These are fine, they're fine, that's coarser, that's fine, that's coarse. So yeah, worth bearing that in mind. Or if you want to, if you've got screws left from your Pocher kit, you may decide you want to go back and use some of them instead, and instead of using these coarser screws. It's entirely up to you. Just get a 2.3, it's an F screw, isn't it, we're using? Yeah, just get a 2.3 by 4 with a proper thread on it. In fact, I'm going to go and get one of those and show you how it looks in difference. Right then guys, so here you go. You can see now, this is the screw they've given us with the Pocher, the Porsche kit. That's a 2.3 by 4. And here's a 2.3 by 5 as given us in the Lamborghini kit. And hopefully you can see on there the difference in the threads. Okay, so don't worry about it. It's not an issue. It doesn't matter. You can either not tap them and screw the screws in without having the threads cut, or you can just carry on and tap them and the screws will go in absolutely fine, as I will show you now. So I'm going to try and get that bag closed. Right, so this is building out a sequence, but basically once we've got it all together, we're going to put these two parts together like this. We're going to grab a screw, and you can see that even though that thread is cut in there, I can wind this in. It gets a little bit tight, and then I can tighten it up, and it holds that together absolutely fine. Same here with this one. Okay, put the screw into there. Absolutely fine. Thread cut or no thread cut, it's holding it together perfectly. And as we can see, we've got a little bit of a gap there. Something is just holding it apart, and there's a little lump or something on there. I don't know if you can see that. There is a gap. You can see my hand. If I get the light right, there you go. You can see that gap there. I'm looking down in here. Yeah, so we're going to get rid of that gap as well. It looks like there's a little lump in there holding it apart. So we shall deal with that accordingly, and make sure there's no gap there, and then we can seam fill that and everything afterwards, because I'm going to be painting, filling and sanding and painting all of this, which is what I warned you about in the start. Right, so let's get on and get this built. So, right, step one is to fit DCB8A. God, dear. That's the one with the triangular flange. So this one's going to go into this side. So that's going to go in like that there. And then we're going to grab one of these little screw J's, I think it was, yes. So that's going into there. And we're going to put this screw J into there. Now I don't know if we're supposed to leave it loose so it can turn or what, but just going to tighten it up. There we go. Okay, and then, you know, I'm not convinced that's correct, you know. That screw's not long enough. Something's wrong here. What's the other side like? Yeah, you see this one. This one is only coming shallow to the face there. You can see this one is coming up to the face. So when we put the screw in, like so, we can tighten that up, and that's still free to spin. Whereas with this one, that screw is not long enough. So either this here is too long, or that shaft there is too short. So what we're going to have to do is find a longer screw, because there's no way. I mean, you can see if I get this screw and I push it up against the end of there, if it would stay on the bloody screwdriver, then it's only got a couple of threads holding it in. Because it's such a soft metal, I've already pulled those threads out. So not quite sure what to do here. Have we got a longer screw? Let's have a look. Okay, so we have a solution. Basically, I have here, I'm prepared, I had the phone go again, believe it or not. So we have in its solution. In the box we have the screw end. There's 4 of them, okay? It's an M2.3, but it has the large washer on it. It's 5mm long, so it's 2mm longer than this one, and it's got a decent amount of thread on it. So what I'm going to do with this one, we've already tapped this out 2mm. I'm just going to drill this to 2mm. Now the correct tapping size for an M2.3 is 2.25mm. So we'll get rid of that. So we've got this longer screw now. That will launch in there, okay, as it would if it was just an untapped Pocher jobby. Now what we can do if we want to is just start it off with a 2.3 thread just to get it going. Okay, that will help us get it going, and then we can put that in there, put the screw in. We'll get the screw on the end of the screwdriver. We can put that in there. The reason I've only done the thread a couple of turns is because I want the screw to go in and sort of self-lock, if you like. So that's going to go in there like so. You can see it's still quite loose. So I'm just going to go in until it stops. I need a bigger screwdriver really. Just going to go in until it stops. Nope, it's still rattling around. Still rattling around. You can see it's nice and tight, and that means it's not going to come loose and fall out in there. There we go. So that's solid now. So we'll hold that and we'll just undo that a touch. And there we go. So it's now free to turn in case it has to. I'm not sure if it has to or not. But there you go. That's that basically done. Okay. So we don't need that screw there. So that was screw J. So that can go back in its box. So now we've got these two fitted. So we're going great. We're on the first stage and we found a problem. So I'll be in touch with Pocher about that. Don't worry. So yeah, they can either put an extra screw in and tell you to tap it out or whatever. I don't know, but or drill it out bigger. But there we go. That's the cure for that one. All right. So there's all sorts of other things we could have done, but I think the simplest cure was to just use one of those. As I said, I've been through the manual, and it would appear we've got 4 of those screw ends in the pack, and it would appear we only need 2 of them. They hold the rear body down to its mounting frame or something. Okay, so that's free to turn now. There we go. Right, so now we're going to, so we've done that to 3. Where's 3? Why is it telling us to put that together next? I do wonder, but anyway, here we go. So they're telling us to glue this together. I don't want to glue this together just yet because I want to be able to take it apart. So I'm going to put that pin in there. I'm going to put that pin in there, and then that one's going into there. So that's going to go together like that, and I don't know why, but as I say, they're telling us to put that in there like that. I can't see for the life of me why we need to do that first. I would have thought this should be 3. So that goes together like that. We put these screws in here to hold that together, just like that, and then that's going to go in like that. This is a bit awkward. And then they're telling us to do that. Why would you do... Is that going to be able to slide in under there? No. I don't get this. Okay, so maybe that can slide in under there. And that's assembled. Yep, and then we can drop that down onto there. Like so. And there we go, and then that end cover is going to go on like that. No, it's not. Okay, and we're back. So I've emailed Pocher and informed them of this issue with this J screw and that. Told them what I've done, told them about the fix I've done, and suggested to them the minimum they need to do is add a an M2, was it M2? Yes it was, wasn't it? An M2 by 5 PWM screw to give you a bit more thread, and I think that will cure the problem. Of course, if you don't tap the thread like I did, you may not have the problem anyway, but we'll never know that because I tapped the thread before I tried it. So I've got on and glued these on. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about this assembly sequence on here. but we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge as we get there. So they're telling us 1, 2, so fit this, and then 3 is to assemble these parts, okay, and then put these 2 cases together, number 4. Then 5 is to fit all this gear change mechanism, which I've done. Now I've super glued, I haven't glued this joint here, but I've glued that joint there, and I've temporarily glued this to the casing, and I've temporarily glued this to the casing. So when I'm done, I can break it off and do all the work I need to do, because I want to seam fill and repaint all this. This is a very, very good colour. The gearbox casings were actually magnesium, so it's a very good colour because they do tend to be a very dark grey, but they also tend to be a very, very matte colour. So I think what I'm going to do is seal them all in, and then I'm going to spray them with like a metallic black. I'll tell you what I use when I get there. So there's that. The starter motor, stupid me, I didn't notice there were a couple of ejection pin marks on the bottom, so I've filled them and sanded them in. So the starter motor is literally going to go in there, glued in on 2 pins. We don't need to show you how to do that because, you know, it's 2 pins. You can't even put it on all around because the pins are made in such a way that you can't actually physically fit it wrongly. So there we go. Now then, so we followed that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now 5, we've done this. So 6, they're telling us to fit this top casing. Now I think what they're meaning here is glue these together. Okay, so glue this together. I've got it taped because I want to be able to take it apart again. The trouble is, if you fit that in there, I'm not 100% sure. It will go, but if you glue that in, I don't think it will go. So the best thing I think you to do, if you've got this all glued together, you can slide that over there, and then you can just drop that tan piece down in there into that slot, and then move it around, and then fit your upper casing. Okay, now your upper casing is going to need to be glued, I think, at the front here, but then when you fit the rear casing on, you've got these 3 pins that are going to go into these 3 holes, and that rear casing is just going to fit on like that. I don't know why I had so much trouble fitting it first time round, but now it's easy. All right, the only thing we're fitting this first, okay, you can see now this is quite loose on here. Okay, now let's imagine I haven't fitted this, so I'm going to take this out of here. I'm going to try and break this away. There we go. Now I can get in there to that screw. Now if I fit this upper casing, forget about the rest of it. I can get in here. I can tighten this screw. It holds that casing together. It holds that in one piece. So I would thoroughly recommend doing all of this. Okay, so my suggestion would be 1, 2, glue these together, okay, and then fit the casings together, but don't tighten that rear screw. Then plonk that in there loosely, or plonk it in there. Plonk is a British word for put it in place for all you Americans. No, it's not, it's just a word we use. So put that in there, and then put that in there into that groove, fit the upper casing, and then with that screw exposed you can get in and you can tighten that, and as you can see now it's all staying together, and then come along and glue this piece in, which is quite possible to do after it's all fitted together. Okay, so that's gone in there like that, and then that's gone in there like that, so it's quite easy to put that in there, and with that off, not having that on, it gives you access to that screw. So my suggestion here would be, in fact, I'm not going to use a pen, I'm going to use a pencil, because the pen will go through to the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 5, 6, 7. Do that last, okay, because you can easily do that after it's all together. All right, so that would be my suggestion. Now to get this apart, as you can see, it holds it that well. I have now got to undo that screw. So you may also be asking yourself, okay, so actually what I'm going to do here is put this together so I can show you, you've already seen it. This is how your model is going to look if you build it out of the box without any changes, but you follow my little sequence corrections to make life a bit easier for yourself. Okay, this is how your model is going to look. Okay, so there's that on there. Alright, so imagine that rear cover is glued on, and imagine that starter motor is fitted. That is step one complete. Forget the masking tape. That's just down there because I don't want to glue it together yet. Okay, so that's that. Now then, let's look at options. So we'll take that starter motor out because it doesn't need to be there. We'll take that rear cover off because it doesn't need to be there. Now, if you want to put this gearbox together, deal with all the seams, deal with that seam around there, and have it all clamped together. Obviously, you can't fit these bits in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this piece out of here. There we go, that's broken off as well. Now that's great. I just put a tiny drop of super glue on there, and I put some accelerator on there and put it together because I know accelerator impairs the strength of the glue, so it made it easier to break away. And also there is only a tiny, you can see it's 4 tiny little drops on there, which I can sand off. So now you see, if I want to fit this on here, tighten this screw, okay, deal with all the seams and get it all nice, there's nothing I can do about fitting these in, unless we decide to do this. So what we do, we come in from the back side. Okay, so this is the back side because that's going forward. Alright, and we're going to draw a line roughly in the middle. Alright, and I'm just going to check, just quickly, I'm just going to check if that line is visible. Okay, in fact I'm going to make it over here, so I'm not going to use that line, I'm going to have it here, so it's in the centre of the casing. Alright, and then what I'm going to do, I've got a 0.5 drill. I'm going to get a little pointy tool with a point on the front, and we've got that seam line there. You can see that seam line on there. I'm going to make a little indentation in that, and then I'm going to take no, I'm not going to use a screwdriver, I'm going to use a 0.5mm drill, and I'm just going to drill a hole through the middle of there. Why are you drilling a hole through the middle of there, you ask? Well, there's a very good reason. Now what I'm going to do is take my modelling knife, and I'm going to put the knife into that hole, and I'm going to pull it down this way, and I'm going to stroke it twice. Then I'm going to take my fine razor saw. Now you may not have one of these, you could use a knife and just cut through. What I'm going to do is cut through this piece of plastic. I'm going to hold one side off the bench, otherwise I'm just going to squeeze it all together. Doesn't need to be dead straight, doesn't need to be perfect or anything, we're just going to cut through, so we go through the middle of that hole. And now you can see that we have got, basically we have got a half of a drilled through hole in there. Right? Now you can use a rule, you can use a marker. I'm going to use my calipers. Okay, what I'm going to do is come along here. That's 2.7 wide, so I'm going to go like 1.35, something like that, 1.3, that'll do. Whoops, I've just dropped that on the ground. And I'm going to go from the front face to the back. I'm going to scribe a line using my calipers like that, and then from the front face as well, I'll do the same on this side. Alright. So now I can now use my little pointy tool, and I can line up where I've just scratched that line. It'll fall into the centre of that hole that I drilled through. So I'm just going to move that over a tad. So now, as you can see, I've made a mark in the centre of where that drilled hole is and where that scribe line is. Now the fore and aft isn't that important, the up and down is the most important. And now what I can do is with my 0.5 drill, I can drill into there and just every now and again turn it around, have a look at it, make sure I'm nice and square. Just like that, keep going in. Okay. So there we go, that's like that. Do the same on this side, and then I'm just going to basically open it out to 0.8. Alright, so drilled those holes out, 0.8. I've put a piece of 0.8 brass rod in there. You can use anything, use an old pin or something. And we've got the hole in there. And as you can see, the reason I did the marking out with the drill and then the scribing is when we put it together, we get it all perfectly lined up. Okay, it doesn't need to be perfect. Near enough is good enough. And what we can do now, you see, we've got our gearbox together, we've got it all sand filled, painted, whatever you want to do. And now we can slot that side in there. Okay, so you can see it's a little bit sloppy, and then we can put this side in here and we can see through the hole in the back. We can align our pins, and that way they both go back in exactly the same place. Now if we want to do that with the rear cover on, okay, we still can. We can hold the rear cover on, we can take that one out. Yeah, we can see the brass rod in there. See it down in the hole, wonking around. We can just put that in there, find the brass rod, there we go, that's in, and glue that together. And there we are, that's how Pocher would have it end up, but we've done it a different way so that we can work on our transmission as one and super detail it wherever we want to do to it. Alright, so there we go. I've just had a thought actually. The other thing you could do with these is if you can find a piece of M2 threaded rod, you could thread the rod into one, put some Loctite on it, and then screw the other one onto the rod. So you would have them then joined up together like a solid diff. It's an option for you if you want to go down that road. Or even get some 2mm rod, 2mm brass rod, and thread it. So you have those joined together then. That's another way of doing it. But anyway, there we go. If you're wondering, that saw was an ASK distribution, artscalekit.eu, or if you're in the UK, I think you can get these from Hannants. You get the blades as well. Brilliant little saws, and that was what I used to cut those in half. As I said in my intro, I'm going to try and as I introduce tools. This tool here is just a pointer. It's just a pointer mounted in an aluminium shaft. It came with one of those sort of, used to get the tool kits years ago in the little wooden boxes. That's what that is. All right, so there we go. So I think that'll do us for step one. I may do a step 1A sort of midweek and show where I've painted this and everything and the little mods I've done, but we shall see. But basically, I've shown you now what you can get from the box, shown you the alternatives, and obviously there's also this about the what we're going to do with those shafts. So I don't know, I may give it a go at that. I think I've got some 2mm rod. I may see if I can cut a thread on some 2mm rod and actually thread those on and have them screwed in together, and that way I can fit them after we've put the gearbox together. We'll have a look at that. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all soon. If you're interested in getting one of these Pocher 917 or Pocher 917s, there's a link in the description below the video. You can go and have a look on there and order yourself one. They're doing a special offer at the moment. They're giving you 50% off the display case if you buy it with the display case. Yes, it's about £789, but it's the cheapest 8 scale, 1/8 scale Porsche 917K kit out there. It's cheaper than the part works, it's cheaper than everything else out there, and it's really, really nice in my opinion. And if all we come across is tiny little things like this going through the assembly, then we're laughing. But as I say, I'm going to look at doing some mods and making it all just a little bit better. So like for instance, I'm going to sand these casings and make them to go together nicer so you don't have that gap, and little bits and pieces. Like I say, I may do a part 1A, we shall see. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for next week and we'll get part 2. And I think next we're going to be looking at making a start on the engine, so that will there is probably going to be a whole video as well. See you all soon. Bye for now.